Hello, it's me, and I'm very happy to roll out a couple more of Calvin Fan and Evgeny's triumphant 3x3x5 variations. So really, they're 3x3x5 variations. Really what they are is they're cross cubes, cross puzzles, which means that you take a 3x3 that has variable circle centers, free up the circles, allow it to move, and glue on extensions to there, making a cross cube that comes out like this. This is your archetypic example, and then you have different variations. We showed the x cube, the L cube. Now we've got this guy, the T cube. So in order to solve this, the technique is really going to be the same. You'll notice that in each of these so far, there's a baseline 3x3 over here. Then you have various cross layers that are put on top of that. In this case, the cross layer surrounds it, orbits it around like this. In this case, the cross area is just in this L formation. But you still have a base 3x3 that's over here, just with different positions. Here, the cross layers are in a T formation. So what exactly does this mean? Why buy all of these? If you solve this, aren't you able to solve the others? Well, yes and no. The actual variations of the solve of these puzzles is based upon the variable position of these cross faces. So I'm going to call this the baseline 3x3 face. Then I'm going to call these extensions that are glued onto the cross area the cross extensions or the cross face. So you're going to hear me talk about the cross extensions or cross face. Basically, that's this whole area here that's kind of glued onto the center that was allowed to rotate from a circle. Now, it doesn't mean that it was designed exactly like that, but it really functions exactly the same way. So looking at these, studying these, the way that you solve these is really, these look exactly like the centers of a higher order supercube. So if you look at something that's a pure cross cube, this can really be looked at as a 5x5 supercube, a center only, zero edge, zero corner 5x5 supercube. So in solving these, it's just a matter of, you can see the crazy cube underneath. But when solving these, it's just like doing the centers and doing the proper orientation with that. The difference here is we actually have the base 3x3. So in all of these, the difference between a pure cross cube is that you still have the baseline puzzle, the core puzzle, the core 3x3 to solve. Once you do that, you then start solving these like the centers of a super 5x5 supercube. In this case, all you have to do is solve it like the last two centers. So what then is the challenge with this? Well, here we have something a little bit more unusual, because you have one center that's kind of by itself, and this can be solved just like one center of a 5x5 supercube, but then you have a center at the top and the center at the bottom, which is at right angles to each other, which means we could potentially solve this as just a 3x3x5, solve it exactly like this. So the technique that I'm going to use is solve the base 3x3, then solve this as you would the center of a 5x5 supercube, and then solve the top and the bottom as you would cuboid strategy, just like you're solving the top and the bottom of a 3x3x5. The problem with that is that there is a potential complication that you're going to get in this puzzle as you solve it like a 3x3x5 that you won't get in this puzzle, a kind of a placement parity. Now, I maintain that it's not exactly parity that you're getting. What you're having are variable issues of placement. But you do get something with this puzzle that you don't get with this puzzle, simply because of one aspect that happens with this puzzle. In a 3x3x5, every piece has a specific place that it belongs to. There's no real issue with equivocating one piece for another. The problem is that when you build it out to a cross cube, the base 3x3 does have issues with equivalencies. What that means is this edge can be here, this edge can be here. These can all swap with each other. These corners can all swap with each other, so you have complete equivalency. So when I'm solving it as a 3x3, I found myself putting these really anywhere that it needed to be, dealing with placement issues at the end by solving these as though they were the center of any 5x5. These act like the center of a 5x5 supercube, these act like the center of any 5x5, and that the orientation meant absolutely nothing. Here, orientation means something. For further elaboration of what I'm talking about, look at X Marks the Spot tutorial where I go through that. With the L cube, you also had equivalency of your base 3x3 pieces, not here, but here and here. So these two edges really acted as equivalent. This can be here and this can be here. But all the corners had specific places to go because there's only one that had complete cross extensions on both sides. So when studying this puzzle, we can run into some interesting issues because what do we have that can potentially be equivalent to each other? Well, we've got an edge here, and an edge here, all which can be swapped for each other. And we have a corner here and a corner here, which can be swapped for each other. So let's see how this enters into the scramble. To really get a good scramble with this puzzle, what you're going to want to do is kind of mix and match these guys up here. That's how I like to do it first. So I'll turn it over here, move this down, turn it over here. So what I'm doing is I'm really just turning all of these cross centers against each other so that I can scramble it really well. Because once I start doing my 3x3 scramble, these are all going to be extensions. I won't have access to these until I get it back to the native shape. So I'm going to keep doing this until I have what appears to be something of a good cross scramble. So what do we think? Maybe separate these two out from each other. Why not? This looks a little too close-knit there. Yeah, let's go like this, this. Okay, pretty good. Now once we've done that, we've scrambled the cross sections, the cross areas. Now we're going to scramble the 3x3, and this is done just like any 3x3. And this is where the shape shifting happens. Now I have to say, Calvin Fan continues to improve upon his mechanisms. Recall that in the previous ones I had some sticker issues, and I think that had to do with the tensioning. Here, the movement is incredibly smooth. So smooth that it almost feels like it might be a little too loose, but it's actually perfect. So I'm going to continue with the scramble, and let's see what happens when we variate the cross sides and see what kind of troubles we run into. Abracadabra. Okay, pretty good. What do you think? Just like the previous tutorials, just in case you miss those or you're having some difficulty with the techniques of the beginner's method, I'm still going to correlate that with a straight 3x3 in its scrambled state. So to start off with, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use 3x3 strategies and solve it as a 3x3. Now again, the purpose of doing that is to get it back to the native shape. Anytime you have a cuboid, anytime you have any shapeshifter, the purpose of solving it based on the lowest order puzzle, in this case a 3x3, is to get it to the native shape so that you can free up layers. You can see that these are part of my cross extensions. I can't get to those. I can't use those to move until I can get it back to the base 3x3, and they can act really as cross layers and move. So the first step is find our side and get our first layer. I do a layer by layer method. We'll start off with the yellow side. And what I'm going to do is, of course, get the cross. The cross is taking the edges and placing the edges where they're supposed to be. An edge is something that articulates two centers. A corner is something that joins three sides, three faces. So this is already lined up with this. We've got this yellow and blue. I'm going to move it down, line it up with the blue center, move it up. This is over here too. So I'm going to line this up with the red center, move it up. And I'm going to find the yellow, orange one rather, and move it up. So that's what I mean about the cross. We have that over here. To do corners, find the corners of the right color. So here's a corner here, yellow, red, and blue. Move that into its particular place and just wind it up into here. Now, worst comes to worst, you can always do RIDI, RD. Keep doing that until this ends up over here. For those a little more advanced, you can sort of visualize this has to come over here, so bat it out of the way, put this down, bring it in, bring it up. So you see that this is over here. Orange, green, and red comes over here, so once again, bat it out of the way, turn, turn, and turn. This one is going to go over here. So I'll just demonstrate the RIDI-RD, 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 and you keep doing that until this ends up coming in. So that's a simple way of putting it in if you're uncomfortable with that. Same thing here, put this just below where it's supposed to be, RIDI-RD. So we have the first layer over here. So too, we're going to correlate that with this. This is done exactly the same way as the other cross puzzles. So I'm going to start off with the yellow side. Now bear in mind, I'm doing the inner 3x3. So there is going to be some edges that are going to bind to centers that have the cross areas. So that's going to be the ones with equivalencies. So let's find, now I'm not going to use this because this is a cross edge and I don't use that until the end. So which ones do I use? Well, I can use this one. This one goes right with the center, articulates right with the center. So I'm going to move this down. This is lined up with a proper center, move it up, and there it is. Let's just move this out here for a second to demonstrate a point. Okay, so this is in over here. So taking a look at this, both of these two edges articulate right with the center. So these are going to come up to here. But which one goes where? Because these both are attached to a cross extension, I want to line it up with any of the cross centers. So over here. It doesn't matter if it's the same color or not, because we're going to fix that later. All we have to do is take this yellow, or whichever your top side is going to be. If it has a cross extension, it doesn't matter which center it binds to as long as it's one of the cross centers. So this is fine over here, and move it up. So this is okay, and it's together with the center here that kind of comes out at you. This is a cross center. So this over here, same thing. It doesn't go with this center. You've already got an orange one over here, so find any cross center. It could be here, or it could be here. Should it be here because they're both green? And the answer is it doesn't matter. It could be any one. So I'm going to move this up over here. So what I mean by equivalency is these two can be swapped for each other. It doesn't matter if I put this one here or this one here. So we'll keep going. Here's another yellow with a cross piece attached to it. So this is already next to a center. That's one of the cross faces, cross extensions, and I just move it up. So really, there's only one edge that has a specific center to go to in the T 3x3x5, and that's going to be the orange one in my case. Your color scheme may be different. The rest of these, it doesn't matter. As long as they're by a cross extension, a center with one of the cross extensions, then you're good. This can be here, this can be here, this can be here. So it's fairly easy. Corners, same thing. We have a corner that's over here. This one doesn't have another color adjacent to it. So it has a cross extension here and a cross extension here. So where this goes is going to have to be in a corner that's in between two cross layers, two cross faces. So how about over here? Well, we've got a cross face over here and a cross face over here, which means that this yellow edge that has a cross extension attached to it here and here must go here. It's one of the only ones that'll do that. Or it could go here, because you have a cross face here and a cross face here. So which one does it go to? Doesn't matter. It's completely equivalent. I can put it here, put it right down below the edge. Now we already have a corner here, but you can see it's not the right one because this doesn't have a cross face attached to it, so it doesn't line up with this. This is an orange one that belongs by an orange center over here. So we're just going to RIDI, RD, didn't really have to do the D, but you can see this fits here, and these cross extensions fit with the centers over here. So this yellow and orange, let's find the orange center, which is here. So now where does this go? Does this go here or does it go here? Well, it really depends on where it fits. It can't go in any one. It only has to go into one. So let's see what happens if we put it here. We can kind of visualize it. If I move this up to here, this will be lined up, but this is coming out at you facing the wrong way. So I know that this doesn't belong over here. I can put it over here and see if it lines up. And it does, because if I move this up, this lines up here, this orange lines up with the center. So let's go ahead and put this corner in, and you can see this lines up here, this orange lines up with this orange center, and this cross extension lines up with this center here. That leaves us with, let's see, here's another yellow and orange. So this one goes to the other orange side, which is here. And it only has one place to go, so we can RD this in. This is in over here. So this corner, which is in between two cross extension layers, where you have these extensions that go to the cross layers, and then you have these two which have a little bit more specificity, actually a lot more specificity. Now we're stuck with the last one here, and that's this. This is another one that has two cross extensions on it, which can go with this center and this center, so that corner goes over here. RI, DI, RD, RI, DI, RD, and you know the rest. So this actually represents our first side, and you can see how it lines up. As long as this is lined up here appropriately, everything else is fine. So now we do the second layer, which is an edges only layer. To visualize it easily here, we find all the ones, in this case, that are not white, such as this. Line it up with the center, and this comes down to here to the right side. So the right-sided algorithm is UR, UIRI, UIFI, UF, and you have that over here. What else we have? We've got this, which also goes here, same algorithm. Turn and turn. And let's see what else we've got. We've got this that comes down to here, so on the left side, it's just the opposite. UI, LI, UL, UF, UI, FI. Brings that down here. And finally this comes down to here. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move this over here and put it in wrong. Now I know exactly where this is supposed to be. There's no false equivalencies of orientation. Because of that, I never run into parity problems with this. In future tutorials, I'm going to get into a little bit more of what I mean by parity problems. And I have a slightly different way of looking at these things because it makes me solve it a little bit different. But I'll go ahead and put this in here wrong, just to prove a point. Turn and turn. So too I'm going to do the middle layer, turn it upside down, and I have to decide what goes where. The only area of the middle that has any specificity of position is this, the yellows. So any corner with the orange. Any corner with orange I know goes over here. All other corners can fit into here. So I'm looking for anything that's not white. Taking a look at this I know is wrong because this is a cross extension, this is a cross extension. It belongs between here. So let's see what we got. This is white, so this belongs in this layer. It's just flipped wrong. We have this. This doesn't have any white in it, and this has this edge is kind of buried in here, but it's got two cross extensions hanging out of it, which means I've got to put it between two centers that are cross faces, this one and this one. So this can fit here. Now which direction does it go? It really doesn't matter. Well, it actually does matter, but we don't know where it's supposed to go. I can move it in here, or I can line it up here and move it in here. The only way to know is at the very end. But I'm going to move it in here, and again, because there are two cross extensions coming out, it belongs on two future cross sides in between both of them. So UR, UI, RI, UI, FI, UF. So this finds a nice home between these centers. So let's see, what else do we have? This belongs here. We've got this is a orange center. Now this one has specificity of orientation, but not location. So this can be moved in over here, or it could be moved in over here. This cross extension can line up with this center or this center. Where does it go? At the moment, it doesn't matter, as long as it falls either between here. So with these, this has non-specificity of where it's supposed to go and non-specificity of orientation. It can be flipped around or it can be over here. Really doesn't matter. This has specificity of orientation but not of location, if that makes sense. That's what makes this a little bit more convoluted than the other. So we can go ahead and put this in. Turn, 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 turn. Turn, turn, and turn. So this is correct. Now let's see what else we got. Here's another one. So let's see what else we have here. This belongs here, but it's not oriented right. So I'm just going to lift it out and put it in right. Turn, 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 and turn. So now down it goes, if I can find it. So now it's going to slip down into here. Turn, 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 turn. Same algorithms and down. So believe it or not, that's all we need. We just need this stripe over here. Everything else is just about put in. Oh, except for this. There's something wrong here. This has to come down to here. This is another cross layer here. I know it's got white here, but it's not white that's just adjacent to the center. It's got to be right adjacent to the center, so that's how you know it goes here. So turn, turn, turn. Same algorithms of putting edges in and down. Okay, now actually we've got it all. Okay, now we have a situation here because you can see we have 3 up and 1 down. You're not supposed to get that unless we've put the edges in wrong. And that's what happened in this case over here. In this case we have 3 down and 1 up. And we know that why that happened because we can visualize that this was put in wrong. Here, because we have equivalencies of orientation, we didn't know that. But we can surmise that based on this impossible situation. So if I were to take this out, move it around, and then put it in, you'll see that magically it all turns out fine. Here, you just have a line over here. Should you get that, you just do F, R, U, R, I, U, I, F, I, and you have your cross. I'm not going to get too much into details. I'm just using that as example, but not too much details as to how to solve the 3x3 with beginner's method. So same thing here. Now I can pick any one at random, any one of these edges that are between cross cubes. Let's say this one over here. I'm going to take this, pluck it up here, turn it around, and put it back in so it's upside down. U, R, U, I, R, I, U, I, F, I, U, F. Wheel it around until I see it again, put it in here. Turn, 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 and turn. And lo and behold, we've got the cross over here. The last part of the 3x3 solve is, of course, putting corners in. So corners, you look to see, well, actually the next part would be orientation of this. So I'm looking to see if there's 2 that are in, these 2 are in, I need them to be next to each other. So I'm going to put one in front of me and do the algorithm R, U, R, I, U, R, to U, R, I, until another one is in. Then I'm going to take the 2 that are in, put one to my right, one to the back, R, U, R, I, U, R, to U, R, I, and then we can just line all these up. Putting corners in, we just look for one that's in. If you don't see it, then you randomly do the algorithm U, R, U, I, L, I, U, R, I, U, I, L. Somewhere there's got to be one that's in, and it's this one. Find the one that's in. It's never going to be 2. It's either going to be 1, none, or all. Put that on the right side and do U, R, U, I, L, I, U, R, I, U, I, L. And so you can see that they're all in except these 2. Then it's just a matter of doing R, I, D, I, R, D into submission. D, R, I, D, I, R, D, R, I, D, I, R, D. Remember to do that last D, line the next one up, do the same thing. And this is basically the beginner's method of a 3x3. And let's apply this to here. So now that we have these oriented correctly, we need to permute them to the right place. Well, there's only going to be one on the T cube that has a specific place to go. So we're done. This is in. These are by a cross center, so we're pretty much done. Or are we? Well, let's find a center, because maybe this is in and this is in, but these 2 aren't in. Well, there's no way to know for sure, but let's see if, let's look at our corners. So this is an L corner. In other words, you have a corner here that has 2 cross pieces attached to it. So it doesn't belong here next to this orange. Nor does this one. This also has cross pieces. This one and this one. So none of them are in. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold it here and do that until one of these is next to the orange over here. One of these corners. U, R, U, I, L, I, U, R, I, U, I, L. So we have this over here, but is this the correct one? Because this does have a specific place it needs to go. Well, it is the correct one because if this were to turn over here, this cross extension piece would be lined up over here. So this corner is correct. This is not correct, obviously. Is this correct? Well, I know that this can't be correct if this is, because it can't have 2 in. That would be an impossible swapping situation, because it means these 2 are in, but these 2 need to be swapped, and that's you know, 1 swap, which you can't do. An even number of swaps. UR, UI, LI, URI, UI, L. So what we see is, you can see that this is where it's supposed to be, as is this. These 2 we assume are the case, so we do RI, DI, RD until they're all where they need to be. So I'll start over here and do RI, DI, RD until this corner piece is lined up over here. RI, DI, RD, RI, DI, RD. We like it. Move this one into position, same thing here. RI, DI, RD, RI, DI, RD. Looking good. One more to go. RI, DI, RD, RI, DI, R, and D. So all this is in. Wheel this to the proper center, and what we have is the base 3x3 is solved, and we have our extensions in place.